Savannah, Georgia. Winter, 1832. A young black woman moves silently through a candlelit dining room. No one looks at her for long. No one asks what she thinks. No one imagines she is carrying anything more dangerous than a silver tray. To the men seated around the table, she is part of the room. Another servant. Another quiet pair of hands. Another body trained to enter, pour, bow, and vanish. That is how power likes its witnesses, invisible. Her name is Eliza Carter. She is 34 years old. She wears a cream head wrap folded with deliberate care. Her dress is plain, her posture is perfect. Her eyes remain lowered exactly long enough to keep white men comfortable. And inside her mind, 7 languages are alive. French, Spanish, German, Dutch, Portuguese, Italian, and the polished, formal English of men who mistake education for virtue. She understands all of it. Every bargain hidden behind refined wording, every lie dressed in merchant language, every number spoken softly over imported wine, as if softness changes what the number means. If anyone in this room knew that, she would not simply be punished. She would disappear. That is why, for 18 years, Eliza has perfected the art of knowing everything while appearing to know nothing. She learned first by accident, or what passed for accident in a life where survival depended on attention. She was 16 the first time she realized words could move money, bodies, ships, entire families. It was spring. The library windows were open. The house smelled of lemon oil, sea air, and old leather bindings. She was polishing silver candlesticks while 2 French merchants spoke with her master near the fireplace. They did not lower their voices. Why would they? To them, the girl bent over the silver was furniture that breathed. But Eliza understood enough French already to follow the shape of their conversation. Not every word at first, not every turn of phrase, but enough. Enough to understand that they were not discussing sugar, not rice, not lumber, not textiles. They were discussing people. How many could be loaded? Which port inspectors would accept payment? How false papers could make stolen human lives look legal on a shipping manifest. One of the men laughed as he said it. Laughed. Eliza kept polishing the same candlestick until her wrist ached. Not because it still needed work, because if she moved too quickly, if she reacted too soon, if she let the knowledge cross her face, she understood, even then, that something terrible might happen. That moment stayed with her, not simply because of what she heard, because of what it revealed. These men believed language itself was a lock, and they believed people like Eliza would never hold the key. They were wrong. French had come first, half stolen and half absorbed. She heard it in the schoolroom when the white children repeated vocabulary after their tutor. She heard it at dinner when merchants from Saint-Domingue and Bordeaux spoke freely over brandy. She heard it in hallways when guests forgot she was standing there with a coal scuttle or fresh towels. She learned the way thirsty earth learns rain. Quietly, completely, without permission. Spanish came after that. There were Cuban merchants in the house often, men who smelled of tobacco and cologne and discussed cargo with easy confidence. They spoke as if no one around them possessed a mind worth hiding from. German arrived through a visiting business partner who stayed almost an entire season. Dutch from dockside traders. Portuguese from Brazilian correspondents. Italian from ship insurers and captains who moved through Savannah with velvet coats and careful hands. No one taught her formally. No one sat her at a desk. No one handed her a grammar book. No one told her she was gifted. She learned because she listened, because she remembered, because memory, for a woman in her position, was one of the only forms of property no bill of sale could list. At night, in the cramped room she shared with two other house servants, Eliza would lie still under rough blankets and rehearse conversations in her head. A French verb, a Spanish phrase, a German sentence spoken near the dining room door while she held a tray heavy enough to numb her fingers. She would repeat sounds silently until they settled into meaning. She would reconstruct entire conversations word by word. She would sort tones and accents and patterns the way another person might sort buttons or save coins. That was how she built herself, not openly, not safely, but carefully enough to survive. Reading came the same way all dangerous things came to her, in scraps. A newspaper left open too long, a letter unfolded on a desk while its owner dressed for supper, an account book she was told to dust but not touch, a Bible verse overheard, then recognized later on the page, a discarded copybook page pulled from the trash before the kitchen fire could claim it. She learned letters first, then words, then the peculiar difference between the broken English she was expected to speak and the formal, educated English men used when they wanted their greed to sound respectable. Eventually, she stole a small leather notebook, not out of vanity, not out of carelessness, out of necessity. It had water damage along one edge and several blank pages in the back. The sort of object a man like Jonathan Hale would barely notice missing. For Eliza, it became something else entirely. A vault, a weapon, a future. She wrote in code, a little French, a little Spanish, abbreviations from German, fragments of English, marks of her own invention, a system only she could navigate. If someone found it, they might see only meaningless scratches, but to Eliza, those pages held ships, dates, names, amounts, ports, meetings, routes. And over time, they held something larger, a pattern. Because by 1832, Eliza understood that what she was overhearing was not a handful of isolated crimes. It was a network. A coordinated machine, hidden beneath polished manners and dinner service. Ships sailing out with legitimate cargo and returning with human cargo disguised on paper. Officials paid to look away. Documents altered just enough to survive inspection. Respectable families making fortunes from people whose names never entered polite conversation. In public, the men at Jonathan Hale's table spoke of commerce, import duties, agricultural prices, political worries, insurance, storm damage, European markets. In private, and often in another language, they spoke of bodies. How many survived transit? How much younger women fetched in one county versus another? Which port was safest this month? Which ship captain drank too much? Which clerk could be trusted if paid in gold rather than paper? Eliza heard all of it, serving soup, refilling glasses, replacing ashtrays, clearing plates. Her face remained empty, her hands remained steady, her voice, when required, remained exactly what they expected. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Right away. Inside, she was building a record, not for escape, not yet, for exposure. That is what makes this story different and dangerous. Eliza is not simply surviving the house. She is studying it, studying the men who believe themselves untouchable, studying the way wealth moves when wrapped in foreign languages, studying the lies that allow 12-course dinners and imported curtains and polished floors to exist at all. She knows which families are involved, which ships belong to whom, which foreign partners write in which hand, which guest drinks enough by the third course to speak too freely, Which drawer in the library desk holds the letters that matter? Which nights the house is so full of visitors that no one notices a servant standing still for 10 extra seconds? That stillness is where she works. Not with ink first, with memory. Because memory is safer. Memory can be hidden in plain sight. Memory cannot be searched by a drunken master in the middle of the night. And Jonathan Hale? He notices none of this. He is wealthy enough to mistake routine for loyalty, careful enough in business to demand secrecy, careless enough in power to think secrecy is still intact if spoken in French over roast duck. He sees Eliza as competent, useful, quiet, almost reassuring in her predictability. He has no idea that the woman pouring his wine can understand every private agreement he makes with the men who sit at his table. No idea that she can read the Spanish letters he leaves on his desk. No idea that she knows why certain ships arrive under false names. No idea that for 3 years now, she has been turning his house into an archive of his own destruction. That is where we begin. Not with revenge, not with escape, not yet. We begin with a woman in a cream head wrap standing against the wall while powerful men laugh over crimes they believe are hidden by language. And we begin with the simple fact that terrifies them most, if only they knew it. She understands every word. And for the first time in 18 years, she is no longer only collecting secrets. She is deciding what to do with them. 18 years. That is how long Eliza Carter has been building something no one around her can see. Not strength, not status, not freedom. Information. In a world where she owns nothing, information is the only thing that cannot be taken from her without first discovering it exists. And discovery is death. So everything she does is built around one principle. Learn without being seen learning. Remember without being seen remembering. Understand without ever appearing to understand. Her days follow a rhythm so precise, it almost feels like safety. She wakes before the house, always. Before the first fire is lit, before the first voice rises, before the illusion of order begins. In the darkness, she dresses quietly, the same indigo dress, the same cream head wrap, folded the same way every morning. Consistency is protection. Anything different can be noticed. By the time the sky begins to pale, Eliza is already moving through the lower rooms of the house, lighting fires, arranging chairs, smoothing table linens that no one else has yet touched. And sometimes, only sometimes, she has a few seconds alone in the library. That is when she works. Not with hands, with eyes. A letter left half open on the desk, a ledger not fully closed, a newspaper folded to a shipping column. She does not rush. Rushing draws attention. She lets her gaze pass naturally, as if she is simply checking for dust. But in those seconds, she reads. Names, dates, ports, numbers. She cannot take the paper. She cannot linger. So she takes something more valuable. She takes structure. She builds the sentence again inside her mind, reconstructs it piece by piece. Then she leaves, exactly on time, exactly as expected. At breakfast, Jonathan Hale sits alone with his newspaper and coffee. Eliza stands behind him, just far enough to be useful, just far enough to be forgotten. He reads shipping news first, always. Arrivals, departures, cargo notes, weather conditions. Sometimes he makes small marks in a notebook, numbers that seem ordinary, routes that seem routine. But Eliza has already learned. Nothing in that notebook is ordinary. She memorizes the pattern of his marks, not the exact figures at first, the structure, which entries matter, which ones he returns to, which lines make him pause. Over time, patterns become meaning, becomes evidence. The rest of the morning passes in movement. Dishes, laundry, dusting, polishing. Work that must be done perfectly, because perfection creates invisibility. Mistakes are remembered. Precision is ignored. By midday, the house begins to fill, not always with guests, but with preparation. Food, wine, conversation waiting to happen. And this is where Eliza's real work begins. Because information does not live in silence. It lives in comfort. Men speak most freely when they feel superior, when they feel secure, when they believe no one in the room is capable of understanding them. Eliza serves them at exactly that moment. She learns how to stand without shifting her weight, how to hold a tray for 15 minutes without trembling, how to keep her breathing slow while her mind is moving faster than anyone in the room. French at the far end of the table, Spanish near the window, German spoken quietly between two men who think themselves cautious. Eliza hears all of it, not as separate conversations, as one system. A name mentioned in French, matched later with a number in Spanish, connected to a route described in German. She builds links, constantly, and she never reacts. Not when they laugh, not when they lower their voices, not when they say something that makes her stomach tighten. Reaction is exposure. Exposure is danger. So she becomes still, more still than furniture. After dinner, when the men move to brandy and cigars, their caution weakens. Alcohol softens discipline. Pride replaces caution. They repeat details, clarify numbers, correct each other, and Eliza listens again. By night, her body is exhausted. Her arms ache. Her feet burn. Her back tightens with every step. But her mind is still working. Because this is the most dangerous part of her day, the part no one sees. When the house is quiet, when the other servants sleep, when there are no witnesses, that is when she writes. The leather notebook, hidden, wrapped, protected, never kept in the same place for long. She takes it out only when she is certain of silence, certain of darkness, certain of time. And then, she translates memory into record, not in full sentences, not in anything that could betray her if read. Fragments, symbols, pieces of different languages woven together into something only she can decode. A ship name shortened, a date disguised, a number split across 3 languages. To anyone else, nonsense. To Eliza, a map. She writes quickly, never more than a few minutes, never enough to risk being caught. Then she hides it again and lies back down, eyes open, mind still moving, replaying the day, correcting details, strengthening memory. Because she knows, if the notebook is ever found, it will not be enough to save her. The real record must live inside her. And it does. Day after day, year after year. What begins as scattered conversations becomes something else. A system. Routes repeat, names reappear, ships move in patterns. Nothing is random. And once she sees that, she cannot unsee it. By the time she is 34, Eliza Carter is no longer just listening. She is tracking. Not just words, an operation, something organized, something hidden, something large enough that no single man in that dining room fully understands it, except her. At first, it doesn't look like a system. It looks like fragments. A name here, a number there, a ship mentioned once, then never again. But Eliza has spent years learning one thing. Men repeat themselves. Not with words, with patterns. And once you begin to see patterns, they become impossible to ignore. A vessel mentioned in French appears again weeks later in Spanish. A port discussed casually over dinner returns in a letter left open on the desk. A number spoken once, quietly, matches a shipment recorded somewhere else entirely. At first, Eliza only notices. Then she begins to connect. And once she connects, she understands. This is not business. This is infrastructure. A network designed to move people, while making it look like something else. Ships leave Savannah carrying legitimate cargo. Rice, textiles, naval stores. On paper, everything is clean, accounted for, taxed, documented. But they do not return empty. They stop first. Cuba, Brazil, other ports where records can be adjusted and questions can be softened with money. There, they take on human cargo. People who should never be there. People who, by law, should not be entering the United States at all. But the law is only as strong as the men who enforce it. And those men have already been paid. Documents are rewritten. Origins are changed. Dates are adjusted. On paper, these people are no longer imports. They are transfers. Domestic, legal, routine. By the time the ships reach Savannah again, everything looks correct. And what looks correct is rarely questioned. From there, the people disappear. Not vanished, distributed, sold quietly, moved quickly, sent inland before anyone thinks to ask where they came from. Plantations in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama. Different buyers, different destinations. No traceable path back to the ship. It is efficient, elegant even. And that is what makes it dangerous. Because systems like this do not rely on cruelty alone. They rely on structure, on coordination, on silence, and most of all, on the belief that no one is watching closely enough to understand. Eliza is watching. She knows the names of the ships, not all at once, but over time. She knows which captains are trusted, which ones drink too much, which ones hesitate when numbers are mentioned. She knows which merchants invest in which voyages, which families never speak directly to each other, but always seem to profit at the same time. 9 families. That is the number she arrives at. 9 separate households. 9 respectable names. 9 reputations built on something no dinner guest ever acknowledges aloud. Jonathan Hale is one of them. Not the loudest, not the most powerful, but essential. His ships, his contacts, his position in the city. He is a connector, and connectors hold systems together. Eliza watches him more closely now, not as a master, as a node, a point where information passes through. She notices the letters he opens first, the ones he reads twice, the ones he burns. She notices when his tone changes, when conversations shift from English to something else, when certain names are never spoken in full. She begins to anticipate. A shipment mentioned tonight will appear in a ledger tomorrow. A delay discussed over brandy will become a complaint in German the following week. Nothing surprises her anymore. only confirms. And then she starts counting. Not just ships, people. Numbers spoken casually, rounded, estimated, dismissed. She writes them down in fragments, adds them, reconstructs them, dozens at a time, hundreds across months. By the end of the year, she understands the scale. This is not occasional. This is constant. Hundreds of people moved every year, thousands over time. Lives turned into numbers, numbers turned into profit, and all of it, hidden behind language. That is the part that stays with her. Not just what they are doing, how they are doing it. They are not hiding the truth. They are translating it, changing the words, changing the meaning, changing the way it sounds, until it no longer feels like a crime. And for years, it works. Because no one in the room understands all of it at once. No one, except Eliza. She is the only one who hears every version, every language, every layer, every lie. Which means she is the only one who can see the truth. And once you see something like that, you cannot return to ignorance. The question is no longer what is happening. The question becomes, what do you do with it? For 3 years, Eliza Carter does nothing. At least, that is what it looks like. She serves, she listens, she remembers. She adds to the notebook, small entries, careful entries, never enough to reveal the whole. Because she understands something most people never do. Timing matters more than truth. Truth alone changes nothing. Truth, delivered at the wrong moment, gets buried. So she waits. She watches the system grow, watches the confidence of the men increase, watches their carelessness expand with their success. They speak louder now, drink more, repeat themselves. They believe they are safe. That belief is the first crack. By early 1832, Eliza has something no one in that house would believe possible. A complete picture. Not just fragments, not just suspicion. Structure. She knows the ships, the routes, the ports, the families. She knows which names appear together, which ones never do, which ones control money, which ones control movement. She knows enough to destroy them. But knowing is not enough, because Eliza is still what the law says she is, property. If she walks into any office in Savannah and speaks what she knows, she will not be believed. If she is believed, she will not be protected. And if the wrong person hears her first, she will not survive. So she does not go to the law. She goes around it. Because what these men have built does not exist in one place. It stretches across oceans, across languages, across borders. So that is where she strikes. The plan forms slowly, not in one moment, over weeks. She begins with a question. What if the truth cannot be silenced because it is heard everywhere at once? French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, English. Not one version of the truth, 7. Each one written for a different audience. Each one carrying the same names, the same ships, the same evidence. If one is ignored, another will not be. If one is buried, another will surface. Together, they become impossible to contain. But to do this, she needs something she does not have. Access. Not to information, she already has that. To the world outside the house. That is when she turns to the only person she believes might help her. Marcus Freeman. A free black man, a clerk at the custom house. Careful, educated, quiet in ways that signal thought, not fear. She has spoken to him before, briefly, after church. Nothing that would draw attention. But enough to know he understands the world differently. The meeting is arranged carefully. No direct approach, no obvious pattern. A walk behind the church, a conversation that looks like nothing. She does not tell him everything, not at first. She tells him enough. Names, ships, routes. She watches his face as she speaks, not for shock, for belief. And she sees it. He believes her, which means he understands the danger. If this is real, he says quietly, they will destroy you. Eliza does not hesitate. They already would. That is the moment the plan becomes real. Marcus does not ask how she learned all of it. He does not ask for proof. He asks, what do you need? Paper, ink, addresses, and a way to send something without anyone knowing where it came from. Over the next weeks, they build the path. Not directly, never directly. Through sailors, through church networks, through men who travel north and ask no questions. Small pieces at a time, nothing that can be traced back to her. And while Marcus builds the route, Eliza begins the most dangerous work of her life. Writing. Not notes, not fragments. Statements. Clear. Detailed. Accusations. She writes in French first, because that is where the money flows cleanest. Then Spanish, for the ports that make the system possible. German, for the bankers. Portuguese, for the traders. English, for the newspapers. Each version different, not in truth, in strategy. Each one shaped to force attention, to provoke action, to make silence impossible. She writes at night, always at night, when the house is still, when the risk is highest. She works quickly, no wasted movement, no hesitation. Ink must not stain her hands, paper must not be seen, time must not be noticed. Every page she completes is a sentence written against the men who own her. Every detail, a piece of a system they believe is invisible. By the end of spring, she has enough, more than enough. Multiple destinations, not one strike, many. They leave the city quietly, in separate hands, on separate days, carried north, carried across water, carried into places Jonathan Hale cannot reach. And then, Eliza waits. Because once this begins, there is no stopping it, no pulling it back, no undoing what she has done. For the first time in 18 years, she is no longer invisible. They just don't know it yet. The first letter arrives in June. Jonathan Hale reads it alone. French. Precise. Cold. Detailed. Names. Ships. Dates. His name. Written clearly. At first, he thinks it's a threat. A bluff. Something meant to shake him. Then the second letter arrives. Spanish. Different source. Same information. The third, German. The fourth, English. Now it is no longer a coincidence. It is exposure. Within weeks, the system begins to collapse. European partners withdraw, credit lines disappear, Ships are delayed. Inspections increase. And then, the newspapers. Boston, Philadelphia, New York. Articles printed with details too specific to deny. 12 families named. Jonathan Hale among them. Federal investigators arrive before summer ends. Not local officials. Not men who can be bribed. Men with authority that reaches beyond Savannah. They ask questions, check records, follow money. And for the first time, the men who built the system realize something terrifying. Someone inside knew everything. The meetings grow louder, more desperate. Voices rise, accusations spread. They look at each other, searching for betrayal. They never look at her. Eliza continues to serve, pouring wine, clearing plates, standing silent in the corner, and listening, as everything she built begins to work. One of the men breaks first. Not the strongest, not the smartest, the one most afraid. He speaks, confirms details, gives names. The case becomes undeniable. By autumn, indictments are issued. Trials are scheduled. Fortunes begin to disappear. The system that took years to build unravels in months. Jonathan Hale changes. The confidence is gone, replaced by something sharper, suspicion. He watches the house differently now, pays attention, listens more carefully, because he knows this did not come from outside. It came from inside his own walls. One night, he calls her name, Eliza, the first time in months. She steps forward, calm, controlled. Yes, sir. He studies her, longer than usual. A long time. Yes, sir. You hear things in this house. She lowers her eyes. I don't understand such things, sir. Silence. He watches her, looking for something, anything that doesn't fit. But she has practiced this for 18 years. There is nothing to find. Finally, he turns away. The moment passes, and with it, her last real risk. By winter, the verdicts begin. Fines, seizures, reputations destroyed. No one calls it justice. But it is damage. Real damage. Ships stop sailing. Routes disappear. The network fractures beyond repair. Hundreds who would have been taken are not. And through all of it, no one ever learns her name. Years later, she leaves that house. Not dramatically, not in a single moment. Just one day, she is gone. No record, no announcement. Just absence. Some say she went north. Some say she disappeared into another city. Some say she changed her name and never spoke of it again. But what she did not disappear. Because the truth she uncovered could not be buried. Not once it was heard in 7 different languages. Sometimes, power doesn't come from strength. Sometimes, it comes from understanding, from patience, from knowing exactly when to act. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one no one sees.